Hello, everybody. We are here again gathered to learn and have an expert share with us knowledge and experience. Today, I have a special treat because I have a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a leader that's going to tell us a little bit about something that it's not usually on the top of everybody's mind in the business world, but it's so important. And I'm talking about business culture. Today we have Andrew Y.J. Kim with us, and he just wrote a book. He's going to tell us a little bit about that. And I want to welcome you, Andrew. Thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedule to just share your knowledge and this information that's just so important nowadays, especially for entrepreneurs, business owners, and even students. So welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Federico. Business owners have a very, very unique set of challenges and a very unique life that they have to live. And oftentimes they have to leverage the knowledge of people who have walked a similar path or have overcome certain challenges. So I'm more than happy to share with some tips or tricks. I hope that people gain a few pearls along this conversation.
I'm sure they will. I'm so excited because even I'm learning. I was sharing with you before we started the interview that as soon as I saw your media kit, I'm like, oh, I'm going to steal some ideas from this one. And also I'm interested in the book and the process you went through to get where you are, because if I'm not mistaken, it's #1 in Amazon.com. Is that correct?
Yes, we reached Amazon bestsellers. It's called Culture for the Left-Brained Leader. And as the title describes, it talks about business culture. And it actually talks about it from a left brain. And what left brain means is from an analytical perspective. Now, to discuss a little bit about how I came about writing this book, as a business owner, I initially come from a background of periodontics and an MBA. So naturally, I thought that business was all about systems and processes and data. So I brought in all the systems that you think would be good for the business, and I put that in place. And then we actually did grow very rapidly at first. However, at a certain point, you take a bigger bite, you take a bigger gamble. And this is something this is something that business owners get the risk aspect of it, right? And at a certain point, you kind of hit a plateau with that approach. And when you hit that plateau, it's not a small obstacle, it is a big one, because now you've just incurred a lot more expenses to your business. And if it does not follow suit, now those expenses are starting to add up. And now what you had in the green is now significantly in the red. And that's when my mind became a lot more open to alternative means of doing business. See, it took bleeding tens of thousands of dollars a month and not knowing when that's going to stop to begin wondering, what else is there? Because I thought it was all about systems and processes and data. Why wasn't this working? In fact, whenever I had an obstacle, I used to introduce even more systems and processes to counteract that. Ultimately, I realized is that there's people attached to the delegatees, that they have feelings, that they have their own dreams and motivations. Now, the thing for left-brainers is that we sometimes see that as a squishy topic, okay? But it also takes a very unique obstacle to begin having an open mind to those topics. At that point, I had a business coach trying to get me to overcome certain obstacles, and it did take quite a journey. And along the way, that's when I come to realize, you know what, it was right. Now that I actually understood and implemented everything, he was right. And it all came down to the business culture. Along the way, that's what I eventually had to overcome and repair. Because along the way, I did create some wounds, distrust that I had to face head on. And I wanted to share that journey because what I've come to learn is that a lot of businesses share a similar struggle, but yet very few can understand and navigate around it. Now, though it is a challenging thing to see, implementing it is a lot simpler than you realize it to be. So I just want to share some tips and tricks along the way. And the first thing that I've come to realize is if there is widespread distrust, you do need to approach that head on. Okay. That one's a very important one because there's a lot of other tips and tricks that that business owners tend to employ. Like for instance, some people-based or team-building exercises, right? It creates some excitement, but then it comes right back down, right? So what's the difference? Why did that happen? It's because the first aspect wasn't addressed. The second one is the business needs to be built or structured for that open collaboration. Because if we're so used to a regimented approach, it is actually a little bit suffocating. It doesn't leave a lot of room for people to grow. So there does need to be a mindset shift of how the business is built in order to allow that, whether that's from an HR standpoint or from the actual ops, like the daily things that you do on an everyday basis. The third one is how we approach strategy. First of all, are we thinking about the future? Some business owners I've come to see, or leaders, they're so intertwined within the daily functions of their work that they never have a chance to look ahead. I also see another spectrum. The other spectrum is they think so much ahead that they have a side effect, which I like to call flavor of the week strategy, meaning that they switch gears so often that it's very difficult for people to actually understand what direction they're going. So I think those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the course of this conversation.
I'm excited because as you're sharing that information with us, like lights flash in my head because I can think of many examples of
it's so widespread. I'm talking about from large companies to your neighborhood mom and pop, because there's a lot of misconceptions on that. And even these smaller businesses, they're almost subject to themselves to think that, you know what, this is just part of how it is, that how you run a business. I have to sacrifice my family. Of course, I'm going to have to take these. Of course, I have to work these ungodly hours and that kind of stuff. But then there is another way of doing business. It's just we just need to have an open mind to it and explore it. And once we explore it, I'll be honest with you, it's a little unique when you first get when this knowledge base comes to you. You have to approach it with an open mind, be genuinely curious, and then take a chance on it. Because when I had a coach, a business coach, who tried to show me that direction at first, I was like, what are you trying to get me to do, man? So it does take an open mind.
No, and I completely understand, but I can also see what you just shared, how it makes it a difference. Because on my experience on the professional world, I've been in the workforce management field. And one of the winning points that I brought to the table was that I considered the human aspect of workforce management, where a lot of my peers, they were very analytical, very good with numbers, and they just pretty much try to plug in people or names or numbers into needs for scheduling and so forth, not even considering the human aspect. It was just numbers or names, a screen, not a human being behind it. And where I was really successful and made a lot of progress and contributed a lot to that company's success was because I valued the individual. And me being on the phones, I knew that other side. So I had like inside knowledge of what triggers people, what motivates them, what's important to our employees. And I would consider that every time we would have to do things like shift bids or rearrange schedules or ask people to work overtime, whatever the company or business need was, I was able to consider the human part and try to make it the most appealing or the best situation possible that I could for my employees. So what you're saying is really important, because sometimes if we just get blindsided with the processes or just doing the analytics and the things, and we don't consider that other aspect, it can bite us later down the line.
Oh, absolutely. There is an intangible component that drives a substantial amount of productivity that is hard to base it completely on data, though in the long end, it does show up on your bottom line. But yes, absolutely. I think that was a fantastic thing that you did for your company, because I've noticed that in terms of trying to address widespread distrust or perhaps heal some wounds, I found three things to be an important thing. First, an important one is create good communication or alignment rhythms. Okay. One of the most common ones that is oftentimes overlooked is, does a manager and the team member have one-on-ones? Do they actually get together? Because it's so easy to get swept in the daily functions of work that you forget. I've been guilty of that. That's why if I don't actually have it on my calendar, I forget to do it. I have utmost respect for my teams, but I forget as well too. And it's important to just touch base with them. What's going on in life? But beyond that, do they have all the tools they need to do a good job? Do they know if they're doing a good job or not? People are curious about that, but they don't know. Sometimes it's more about like aspirational things. What do you want? What direction do you want to go? Those types of things. And I've found that that's good to do in like a monthly cadence for something that's a routine job, but something that's rapidly evolving, even as frequent as twice a month is something that I've come to see. So that one's very good to actually just do that, especially if it's not your natural thing to connect with people. Another one is, let's just say you're a senior leader and you have multiple teams now. Now that gets a little bit more tricky because you don't have that direct access with everybody, right? Another one that's really important is what I like to call town hall or state of the union or all hands. It goes by many names. It's a time to just talk with everybody. That allows you to do a few things. Number one is, some things is good to come from the boss or the leader, okay? Some things is good to come from them, because otherwise what happens is misinterpretation. And when there's misinterpretation, gossip, confusion, right? So if there's any questions about it, you can clear in the end, because when there's confusion, it just kind of creates an unpleasant feeling that could have been addressed so easily. Another one is when there's different functions within a business. Oftentimes they collaborate, especially if your culture is getting pretty decently, but there is a stalemate that forms occasionally. It's good for the leader to just address where is it to break that stalemate, if you will. And the third thing is, sometimes different functions don't have a chance to get together to talk, because they do have to interact with each other as well too. So it creates a place for people to talk about those kinds of things. So that's another one that's oftentimes forgotten or not done. And then of course, just imagine all the rumor spreading or all the distrust that can form. I mean, you see it all the time, like ops being like, when why is sales constantly pushing things on the ops, or is the other way around? Why is ops complaining about it? HR being like, hey folks, come on, where is all the information? If you're onboarding someone, you gotta let me know all that stuff, right?
Well, no, and that's a great topic because I have an example of exactly what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
The company I worked at, the marketing team created a great strategy. They were going to launch all these mailers and all these promotions. It was going to be amazing. They were expecting X, Y, and Z to happen because of that. And so they just launched it and threw it. They didn't bother to tell anyone, not the call center that was going to take all those calls for their marketing campaign to be successful. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody was blindsided when, out of the blue, on a regular day, the phones are ringing off the hook, and we don't have enough people, staff,
Yep.
to be able to handle all the calls, and we don't know what's happening, like what broke, like what's going on. And come to find out, and marketing said, oh yeah, we did this promotion, and we didn't think much of it. We thought we'd be prepared and equipped to do this. And like, well, you're not. That was a
Yeah.
great learning opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, that's a classic example of misalignment. I mean, think about all the missed business opportunities from there because you got overloaded with the calls and not being able to pick them up. You're losing customers left and right from that. And besides, that's frustrating to deal
Yes,
with.
on both sides, because in their mind, they invested all this money, they're expecting all this return on investment, and then on the other side is like, we can't even take a break. Like, we're being almost forced to work overtime and try to cut our lunches from an hour to half hour, and all these temporary fixes just to stay afloat, which is never a good experience.
Yep.
And that also brings me to another point that I know a lot of companies, business owners face, and you mentioned a little bit of that, but it's the balance between keeping people happy, but still running a business.
Oh,
Because if you
absolutely.
just run a business, but if people aren't happy, that's not going to work. If you just have people happy and don't run a business, well, I'm not going to pay the bills or keep the lights on either. So I think culture also considers that, and it's an art to try to figure that balance because it may change from company to company and from department to department. What works on one might not be the solution to another department or company or whatnot.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And one thing that I've come to learn is you actually can intentionally move the needle on it. So that's something that people don't understand. It happens by default. It's just the way we do things, but it's actually possible. And that's just some of the stuff that we're talking about, like the some of those alignment rhythms that we're talking about, the communicational channels. That's just one component of it. We'll be talking about some of the other stuff. Of course, it's an overview, and we can go into deeper. But then once you realize it, actually, when you're implementing it, it's like, oh yeah, of course, these things connect the dots. So
Yeah,
let me throw one more
go
alignment
ahead.
then before we go on to another topic, which is what I like to call cross-pollination. That's where you actually have like a leader with like their managers who report to that leader. And it's very good because number one, there needs to be a space between for where the leaders and managers congregate together. The reason why I like to call it cross-pollination is because at a certain point, you don't know what's going on everywhere in the business, right? And so at first, most of the ideas might be coming from you, right? But at a certain point, that doesn't work anymore. And the ideas needs to start coming from them. Now, when a particular team has solutions for something, they can share it amongst others. And that's what I like to call cross-pollination and collaborate amongst us. Sometimes it's within a similar function. If it's a larger size, or it could be with different different departments as well too. Besides that, it's an excellent chance to be on the same page. So let's just say you're making a little pivot, right? And if you don't get on the same page with your managers, okay, that means that they won't know what to tell their team members as well either. So it becomes a big confused situation. So that's another one that I found to be extremely helpful. But the main thing is how we do it. Okay, because it can be extremely intimidating. You can't have that intimidating boss syndrome. You actually have to be great at striking partnerships and collaboration. So that's another commonly missed one that I've seen.
No, and it's great what you're bringing up. I love it, and I wish we had hours of chatting because there's so much information that's
Yeah.
valuable here. But what comes to my mind with what you just shared, I worked at a company and they wanted to hear from the employees. So what they would do, they would incentivize that if you would share an idea that would help a process or the company or create revenue or save money, whatever it was, it could be the silliest thing or it could be the most elaborated plan and very detailed. And what you would do, you would submit it, and if you submitted it, you get like a little hurrah, little kick, reward, either just being mentioned in your team. It's some sort of incentive. But then the big incentive was that at the end of the year, like the company would review out of all the things that were submitted, which one was the best one of them all, which one saved the company most money, earned the most money, or whatever it may be. And whoever submitted that idea was awarded $1 million. So imagine the motivation behind just getting those ideas out there and just pushing and trying to really go out of your way to find ways to save money, to increase productivity. So it was costing the company a lot of money, but it was a great investment because it provided more money savings or more revenue than whatever they were paying out as motivation. And I think that speaks to what you were mentioning, where all the ideas or business practices don't necessarily have to come like from the top down. Like the leader doesn't have to necessarily think of all the solutions, ideas, but it can also come from the front lines or anywhere. Just have to have that mentality and that culture.
That's right. And especially in today's business climate, that is, in my opinion, the way to survive, simply because the main leaders don't know what's going on everywhere. It would be too slow for them to actually learn about it, get information, and then even when they want to implement it, they don't know what the considerations and objects, the obstacles are. And that's why that collaborative approach is absolutely necessary. Which brings me to my next point, which is the second thing is the fact we have to really look at how we approach management and leadership. Now that is a broad topic, you know that as well too. But I want to speak to something that is very common within left-brain leaders, okay? Left-brain leaders are analytical. We are detail-oriented. We're very good at seeing where there are gaps. So let's just say something comes up and escalates to us. Probably we'll tell them what to do, right? Or besides that, let's just say something is brought up and then they offer an idea. We're really good at seeing where the gap in that idea is. It took me a while to realize that if I just nitpick the details, or if I just tell them what to do, I'm actually not helping the situation in the long term. Simply because now made the entire team dependent on you. If you're not there to provide all the answers, they can't function without you. And that's when I realized that I actually had to develop people. And this is something that is very important because it kind of goes against your nature a little bit at first, especially if you bring up an idea. If someone brings up an idea and you can see where the gaps are. But I've come to learn that even if what I can come up with in the short term would win out, their idea, as long as it's in the right relative direction and maybe a little bit of guidance, wins out on the long term. And the reason why is because they know their idea inside and out. And so they know how to pivot around it, because a different obstacle that neither of us can conceptualize will occur. And they'll know what to do with their idea, but if they didn't mind, they'll freeze.
I like that.
With it.
Because now you're making them think and you're helping them grow. And also that builds something else. That builds trust.
It does.
Now they feel like, my boss trusts me to do this. Although he can see some gaps and he maybe provided feedback or not, but he trusts me to do so. And that's a big win with for a leader, to have your people trust you and feel valued, that they contribute and they make a difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Something I've noticed in many companies, it even upsets me a little bit, because there could be issues in the companies or whatnot, and there could be culture, or it could be a lot of things that everybody knows are challenges, and there could be disgruntled employees and whatever it may be. So things could be messy. But then there's a big push from, the higher ups, that they want to hear from the employees and do these surveys. So if the survey is at the end of the month, like for the previous week or month, like the leaders become like the nicest people, and they are providing all these amenities. And now they even have, they bring food for the agents because they're counting on a positive survey. And I just feel that that game doesn't work, and the leaders come across looking like hypocrites in a sense, because they're meanies all year, but then come survey time, it's like, oh, we're the nicest people on earth. Like, no, you're not.
Right. So people can tell, and that's why those differences in those everyday moments, how we handle those things, how we build those relationships, that is a critical component to it. And I'll be honest with you, if you're not used to doing things this way, it's going to feel weird at first. You just need to push through, okay? And it's a skill to develop, okay? You're going to crash and burn a few times along the way. Keep at it, okay? Because this is like learning a new skill, like riding a new bike. If you haven't done things in this way before, but I recommend you to continue to push on, develop the skill, because it is a very good one to have up your arsenal. And that actually,
go ahead.
That actually brings me up to the third thing that you were about, a third key component to the culture. You mentioned when there is some distrust or disgruntled employees, right? Now, here's the thing. When we're trying to move the needle on something like this, okay, there's going to be some people who are excited about it, but there are going to be people who are not so excited about it, okay? Number one, it's important to realize that it's going to be a process, okay? But second of all, we have to learn what people are thinking, learn to speak their language, understand their world, okay? The best way to enact a culture shift is, I like to use a strategy as a backdrop, because that's when people start taking it seriously. Because without it, it just tends to fizzle out. It's just, hey, let's be nicer to each other. Let's just collaborate better. But it just kind of fizzles out after the week, right? A strategy is a good backdrop for it. Okay, when we want to do this, but in order to accomplish this strategy, we need to approach our work culture differently. Now, that being said, there's 4 things I recommend touching on. Okay, the first one is who needs to do what by when. Okay, because there's some people that's what they want to know. The second one is why are we doing it? Because some people want to understand why. The third one is who's doing what. The fourth one, and this is the one I've come to learn, is single-handedly the most important one because it represents the majority of thoughts of people. What's changing and what's not changing. Mm-hmm. That is the most important one because a lot of people, they're thinking about what's it going to do to my job? It's okay. Do I need to drive for it? Is it going to do something a little bit different? We have to communicate that very well in order to get the buy-in, because we want to get people to buy in order and practice management and leadership in a particular way and get our people to feel empowered to collaborate and bring ideas to the table.
No, I agree. And I like how you're very articulate and you know how to describe a lot of complex things in just plain terms that all of us can understand. Mm-hmm. So I noticed that on your book, which I'm really excited to get a copy. I'm going to, as soon as we finish the interview, I'm going to go look it up and order one because I'm always trying to develop myself. Not just as a leader, but as a human being. And I like learning concepts I'm the eternal student. I'm always open to learning from anyone, and especially if it's a topic that interests me. And what I also want to mention is I was looking at your book, and the target audience is very broad. Like I see that it's for business leaders. It could be obviously business owners, HR professionals, which makes sense, but technology leaders, that's interesting because not all technology leaders are really are your regular leader types, because they're dealing in a world of more jargon and technology and tools, and they're more focused on that. So I think this is great for people to get them out of those ruts, so to speak, and see things from a different perspective. And engineers, I see doctors, lawyers, accountants, finance professionals listed, which it's great. In layman terms, it looks like this book is good for all of us. Even if you're not a business owner, you can learn the concepts and apply them on your everyday life. Because if you don't own a business, maybe you work for a business or you have some sort of interactions with a business. So this is going to take you there. And you can also use these concepts for your own development, either as a student or as in your family, either head of household or a member of the family. And what I like of the benefits that you get out of this book, it's first of all, aligning your leadership team. That's always good. We're all pulling in the same direction and not against each other. So that's a really good concept. And then learning about self-directed teams, like I'm all for that. If I don't have to be micromanaging people, which I don't like and people don't enjoy, if they can be self-sustained to a point, that's amazing. And then just getting clear with what culture really means to not only to businesses, but to your particular business. Because I'll give a quick example. In call center world, when I was working at this company and we needed overtime from our agents on the phones. For the sales team, you would have to approach it a different way than from the service team. If I wanted to get a great response for overtime from my sales team, I would put a dollar figure behind it. let's say overtime available, make time and a half or whatever, and then we're going to throw a bonus. All the people that work this weekend or whatever, you qualify, the top person or whatever gets this prize money, because in sales it's what's in it for me and show me the money. That's the biggest driver for most sales employees. But for service, like, you can throw money at them and it won't move the needle as much. They're like, no, I have plans with my family and blah, blah. And they just have a different mindset. So to motivate them, what I used to do is work on the recognition side. They were more interested in being valued. And, the people that do this, we're going to have a luncheon for you guys, and we're going to award the person that has the most overtime work. Now that recognition did move the needle, because their motivation was more, not as much as financially, as much as feeling valued and feeling that they're making a difference. Mm-hmm. So within the same company, completely different mentalities. So when you're talking about culture and all these different scenarios, you really have to identify what's going to move the needle for your business and for your team and for each mm-hmm. team inside your business. And it not might be like one size fits all. So that's why I like what I've seen on the description of your book. It touches on all these things, and it gives people the tools to be able to be successful. So I'm really excited, and you've done such a great job, and that's without me even reading it yet. Once I read it, you'll see me on the Forbes and magazines and Times, because I'm going to be amazing.
Yes, because these are real life scenarios that you're up against that it actively talks about. And so 100%, we have to know who we are up against, and know how they think, what their world looks like. The book also broaches a bit on like kind of how some of the HR aspects should look like, and some in terms of how the business units based upon like information and data being transparent, so that everyone can diagnose together. Of course, some relevant ones and whatnot. And at the same time, a lot of businesses focus on the customer experience, right? In order to really get what we want, right? How many businesses look at the employee experience from initially how they heard about the company, to the recruitment side, to the onboarding, the employee experience during, and even when it's time to, when they move on? How many companies actually look at that journey as well too?
Not many, but I know a lot of the successful companies out there have some sort of mm-hmm. employee satisfaction or life cycle that they consider and that they value. And that's important. So that's a great point to bring up.
Right. Because almost all do it for the customers, and it's just using the same mentality for the employee journey as well too. Because especially in today's world, if we want our employees to take good care of our customers, our employees need to be happy.
No, I agree. Yeah. And it's, I think we've really shared with the people or answered the question, where do I get started? And I think by doing it, by having an open mind, I think the book is a great tool and a great starting point. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. Do you do coaching? Do you mentor people? Do you analyze companies and bring your knowledge and share with them tidbits of how they can improve their culture, their environment? And if so, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, I'd be happy to answer that. So you can, for the book, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Culture for the LeftBrained Leader. You can also email me at andrew@culturen, like the letter N, strategy.com. I do help companies in terms of coaching capacity, also in terms of an advisory capacity, or something that is a bit more involved. I've come to learn that they're all a bit different. And so just striking a conversation is a great way to start, just to get to know each other, because that's another important thing. That's a very important thing in terms of like having a good dynamic. And so it depends on what your situation is, and initiating a conversation is a great way to get started and get to know each other.
Yeah, I agree. And are you in social media at all? Like, I don't know, Instagram, LinkedIn? If so,
LinkedIn, you can find me on Andrew YJ Kim. Without the YJ, it is a little bit difficult to find me, simply because Kim is a very common surname, and so is Andrew. So you can find me on LinkedIn as Andrew YJ Kim.
perfect. Thank you for that, because that's going to make a big difference. I know when I looked for people that have common names, it's nearly impossible to find them. So that's going to help a lot of people really get a hold of you. Now, I'd like for you to share with us, if nothing else out of our conversation sticks, what would be like the one takeaway or the most important thing that you like for people to remember or keep? Don't not forget. Focus on that.
The one thing I like to have them focus on is the fact that the business culture, it is very impactful. In fact, that's the thing that really turned around my life. And in terms of financial, in terms of available time, in terms of stress level. So it is, even though it doesn't sound like it at first, it is a topic that actually goes directly into what is relevant to you. And it is possible to move the needle on, okay? It does need to be done in a very particular way. And it is actually, I hope people realize, as we're talking about, these are everyday things that we're up against. So it is an approachable topic as well, too.
Thank you for clarifying the important point. As you're saying that, what comes to my mind is something that I've encountered in the different positions that I've held throughout different companies. There's usually this idea of, well, let's just put a Band-Aid on it, like a temporary fix, because it's urgent right now. We just have to fix it for now. But that becomes a habit, and everything they do is a temporary fix to have Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids, and eventually all that is going to collapse. So my mentality has always been, it is what it is. If you have to put a Band-Aid one day, well, you do what you have to do, but the focus should be to be more proactive and find a long-term solution, not just these temporary fixes. So as business owners, like you were mentioning at the beginning of the interview, it's a scary feeling when you're investing all this money, and obviously you want those quick wins, and you want to get your return on your investment as soon as possible, and you want these quick fixes as much as possible. And a buzzword in many companies is, well, let's pick the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, but there's just so much low-hanging fruit that eventually you have to bring the ladder and climb up there to really get the fruit. So on those scary moments, to minimize your risk and to failure, or to end up owing more money than you should, or to for the long run, maybe not immediate. You might not see immediate benefit, but in the long run, it's going to make a big difference if you start implementing ideas and concepts like company culture, and that's going to make a big difference in the long run. And the way I see it, I was in sales environment where in a team you would have sometimes the star salesperson that could do no evil. They were like a teacher's pet because they were making all these sales. So the supervisors that made some sort of bonus, commission, incentive due to that, like it was their Michael Jordan in basketball, like their superstar, right? But many of these salespeople, they would do shady things. They would bend the rules. They would offer things that weren't necessarily true. And what would happen? Yeah, they got all these numbers of sales, but in the short run, all these customers would call back and cancel and be disgruntled and have a horrible experience. So if you're just blindsided at looking at this salesperson that's bringing in the revenue initially and don't see the end part of it, like the result down the line, that it's actually costing you money because now you have people that were promised things that weren't true. So you have to refund money and you're losing money and time and resources and product and so forth, where you have a team that might not be selling as much because they're doing things the right way. They're not promising things they can't deliver, and they have quality and integrity and so forth. And initially you might think of it like, well, these aren't as good of sales agents or representatives, and you might get discouraged. But at the end, you'll find that the sales that they make are going to create long-lasting relationships with those customers because from the get-go, they had a good experience. Everything that was promised was delivered, and there's value to that. That sometimes people that have really short sight vision don't see the whole picture. And at the end of the day, when you're running a business, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You want to be there for the long run, not just be an overnight success and then disappear. So I think that's one of the things that I'm capturing on the importance of company culture. But feel free to add anything I missed or correct if I did mention something that wasn't completely in scope.
Well, in terms of the cult, in terms of one of the things that we're trying to accomplish when we're having a great work culture is having a good balanced approach. So there is a goal-driven aspect. There is an analytical aspect. There is an aspect of in terms of gathering people together to rally them together. There is a considerate aspect. It's this balanced approach that tends to get the results, but at the same time create a very sustainable situation. And that's actually what makes self-directed teams. When they have the balanced perspectives in order to hit the goals, but at the same time do it in a very sustainable manner.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for clarifying and sharing that. Now I'm looking at the clock and I know it's late where you're at. I don't want to abuse of your good nature and your time. But before we wrap things up, are there any last words or anything you'd like to share with our audience? Any little gold nuggets that they can take away?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Well, it took me a very, very big obstacle, a very tough time to begin my mind being open to this topic at all. And I'm really glad I went through it. And then in the long run, it's really helped me out. If it's possible, explore it. Open your mind before that, because you may be able to save yourself a lot of hurt. Maybe that's the one last nugget that I want to share with.
And I love it. Being proactive, having an open mind, and like I mentioned at the beginning, be the eternal student. Be humble enough to know that you can learn something from anyone, and there's always something that you can learn, and that's gonna go a long way, especially if it can avoid being in a situation where now you have to do or die sort of either figure it out and come afloat or that's all she wrote. So before you get to that point, if you can find the tools and the direction and have experts like yourself, sometimes that's something I even shared with you. I'm not here talking about company culture on my own because I'm not an expert on that topic. I understand concepts and I've seen it work, but that's why I like to invite experts like yourself that can speak from experience, from knowledge, and just have it figured out a lot better than me because I want to provide the audience the best tools and the best resources for the topic that might interest them. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you shared all your either social media, how to get in touch with you, because if feel free, anyone that's watching to reach out to me and I'll be happy to respond, but also reach out to Andrew for specific topics on the company culture and creating this environment and how to navigate through all these challenges that you may be facing or that you could be facing later on. So Andrew, I want to thank you so much for being on my show. Thank you for dedicating this time and from just being um, honest, speaking from the heart, and your willingness to share your knowledge and your expertise with other people. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed being on here and enjoyed our conversations. Thanks.
No, it's been a great time. I hope the people watching us also find value. And I just want to invite all of you to recommend this to your friends, subscribe to my channel, and subscribe to this video. Reach out to Andrew, follow him, get his book, support him, and receive all the benefits from all the knowledge that he has to share. So Andrew, I don't want to say goodbye, but until next time, thank you again so much for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Have a great night. Goodbye.
Good.